Hello and welcome to another video. My name is Arlis and today I want to show you how to build a React Tic Tac Toe game. So this is a pretty simple project and this is how it's gonna look. So the game, it shows you who the next player is, and then it also shows who won. Let's see, the winner is then the game stops, and then you can also go back in time to each of the state, and you can also modify each of the states. So let's say we go back all the way to there and we want to go back a few moves, and then we can play again from there. So that's the project in a nutshell. Let's get started and I'll show you how to create this from scratch. There, YouTube Tic Tac Toe. Let's change it into that. And first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna just use create React app to have some the boilerplate React code. Create React app Tac Toe. Now we're just gonna run this. So there you go. Once it's finished, you can see that you have a new directory if you enter into it and open it with code, VS Code or whatever text editor you choose to use. You can see that it generated all these files for you. So if you just create a new terminal and run this, say npm start, and then there you go, you get something like this. So this is a basic React app template. So what we're gonna do is we are going to just keep that there for reference, and now we're just gonna code the whole game from scratch. So the very first thing, we're gonna delete all the files that we're not gonna use. So we're not gonna use this, we don't need that, so delete all of these. Report web vitals, logos with VG because we're not gonna display this logo. App.test.js because we're not gonna do any unit tests. And then app.css, we can delete that one as well because we don't really need it. So if you go back to app.js, you can delete both of these imports because we're not gonna import in the logo. Same in the app index.js, delete this. And you can also delete the bottom bit. And if you go back to app.js, you can delete the whole thing. You can maybe keep the div, and then we see that we have a blank app. So if we just write here anything, hello world, there you go. This is a blank React app. So just delete this and keep that there. Another thing that we're gonna need to do is we're gonna need to have some CSS. So the very first thing we might do is actually write the CSS for the game. So I already done this before, but so I don't really need to experiment with this, but you can just copy this for now if you want. So we can say font is 14 pixels, century, Gothic. So this is just the font that I want to use. say 20 pixels for margin. Background color, let's say something like there you go, you have that green color that we want. Then we can delete this, because we don't really need that. And add some styling for ordered and unordered lists. So all we're gonna do for that is padding left. Let's say 30 pixels. Then we can say board. This is just the CSS for the board that we're gonna come up with later. After, say clear both, and content. It's gonna be just this, and then display, say table. Then dot status. Just give it a margin bottom of, let's say 10 pixels, and then dot square. Let's give it a background of completely white background, so that would be options F. So there you go. Border of 10 pixels. 10 pixels, solid. Also, the other thing that we can do is can kind of zoom this in, so it's going to be easier for you guys to read. And then let's give a border color. So what I want to do is I say 999, something like a little bit gray. Float, let's say left. Font size 100 pixels. Font weight bold. Line height of font weight, line height. So 34 pixels. Should be a dash there, that's why it's giving me the error. Height, then height would be 200 pixels. Margin, right, it's gonna be, and this 1 pixel. Margin top. Let's give it so there is no margin. Padding of 0 and text line, let's say center, and width of 200 pixels. I would say dot square. Focus. Outline percent DDD, there you go, and dot KBD navigation dot square focus. So what this is gonna do is this is gonna style the keyboard navigation. Just give it a background of # DDD. Then let's give the actual styling to our game component. .game and padding left. Left. 30%, so this is just gonna make sure that our game is in the middle, and then padding top, say 5%, display X and flex direction is gonna be row. Say Dr. Game info margin left 20 pixels. So now I'm done with the CSS, and we can move on to the HTML. So we can just delete this whole thing. If you want to keep it, you can. But I'm just gonna replace that with my own HTML. So I'll say head and then just give it a title. Title of Tic Tac Toe. And then that title appears down here, if you can see. Then we can create a div to display any errors that we have. Div, and then let's just give it ID equal errors. And then we can say style. And just give it some inline styling. Now we can say style. Something like background. And let's give it red. So it'll be C00. And color. Send FFF. There you go. Display. I can say none. Margin. Minus 20 pixels. Minus 20 pixels. Minus 20. Minus 20 pixels. So all this is gonna do is set the margin for that error box. Padding 20 pixels. So this div is just gonna display any kind of errors that we have, if we have some. It's kind of like an additional kind of box to see errors. And now we're gonna create the root div. This is where we're gonna actually display the game and everything else. So now we're gonna just create some some scripts. So this is just gonna be to add and remove some event listeners. Mouse down, and Shift E, and document body dot class list dot add. So we want to add mouse navigation. Navigation. Document body class list remove. And we want to remove the keyboard navigation from this. Keyboard name. There you go. Then move on to the next one. There's a few that we have to add. Window dot add event listener. Event listener. So and then key down function E. If there is a key, the key code is 9. You're just gonna dot body dot class list dot add event listener key body keyboard navigation document dot body class list just add instead of add event listener. Add dot remove mouse navigation. So we added our event listeners. There's a few more that we have to add. Window dot event listener. So this is the on click event. Click. Option E. Option E. If E dot target dot tag name is the same as A, and target dot get attribute href is a hashtag. Then we want to prevent the default. Prevent default. Call this and dot on error. Dot on error is equal to function. So this is what's gonna display any error messages inside a div above the game. Call that error. See more text is equal to error dot stack error dot all error message plus say add the source this line plus colon line. So we need the semicolon there. Plus colon plus this is gonna be our message and then errors start text colon content this equals text plus, and then we add a new line and start style dot display. So this is what's gonna happen on error, and then we also wanna add the error to the so dot error function old join start this, then the arguments. So this is just going to help us to debug if there are any errors. So once this is done, we can go to actually creating our game. The CSS is done, and also the HTML is done. So we can go to our source folder. Inside of our source folder, we can create a new folder. Let's call it components. Inside the components, create a new file. Say square.js. So this is gonna be the this is gonna represent each of the individual squares in the game. So first thing you're gonna do is gonna import React. Then we're gonna create a functional component. So we're gonna say function square and the properties that it's gonna take. Then we can say return, and what is it gonna return? It's gonna return a button. Each of the squares is gonna be a button that's styled. So you can return a button. We give it a class name, square. So this is the CSS that we wrote before. That's gonna be applied to this square. And then we say on click of the square. It's gonna have a function that's gonna be passed down from the properties, and it's gonna call that function. Then each of the squares is gonna also display property value from the properties, value props.value. And then the last thing that we're gonna do is gonna export default square. So what this is gonna do is gonna allow us to import square into other files. So right now we've created a square. Let's create the board. So if we go to our components folder and create a new file, say board.js. First thing that we're gonna do is gonna import React. We're also gonna import the square. Once this is done, we're gonna create a functional component called board. So we say class board extends react.component, and this is our functional component board. To make sure that you don't forget, you can export the default board. So we're gonna use this another. So first thing that we're gonna do is gonna define the render square method on the board. So render square is gonna take in the property I, and all it's gonna do is it's gonna return a square, and we're gonna pass into the square some properties. So the value that we're gonna pass into the square is gonna be this props.squares. So we're gonna have a squares array inside the game later on. It's gonna pass in specific square, and arrow function this props, and we're gonna pass in a function props that on click. We're gonna pass in the I. So that's done. After this, we're gonna define the render method. Render the board. So we can say render, define the render method, and to define the render method, what we're gonna do is we're gonna say return. We want to return a div, and inside of this div we're gonna actually return we're gonna have a bunch of divs, that each div is gonna represent a board row. So you can say class name board row, and this is the name. This is gonna be the row of the board. So what do we want to do inside here? We want to call this render square method and pass it 0. So this is square 0. And for this row, there's going to be 1 and 2. So that's row 1. And we're going to have 3 rows of 3 squares. So you can copy and paste this for another 2 and change the numbers. So let's say 3, 4, 5, and then say 6, 7, and 8. And now we have a board component, make sure it's exported. So the next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna create the game component. This is the last component of this whole game. So we can say game.js. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna import React, and we're also gonna import the board. So once both of these are imported, we can first of all we can create a function that is gonna calculate the winner, because I don't want to do this later on. So you can say function calculate winner. This function is gonna take in an array of squares, and it's gonna check if if the squares are in winning combination, and if yes, which player actually won. So all this is gonna be lines. Is gonna be an array of arrays with all of the winning combinations. So we have 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8, and then we keep on going, and 3 and 6. 1 and 7. You can say 1, 4 and 7. Say 2 and 5 and 7, 2, 5 and 8. 0 and 4, 8. And then the last one's gonna be 2 and 4, 6. So this is all lines. Check. So now we can say 4. Let I is 0, 0, while I is less than lines length. 0 and I plus plus. So we're gonna loop through the lines array. And first of all, we're gonna assign 3 variables. So we can say const A and B and C to lines I. If squares A and squares A is the same as squares B and squares A is the same as squares C. And then return squares A. Else we can just return null. good. So now we can create the actual board component. So first thing that we're gonna say class game, not the board, the game component. So class game extends React dot component. And we can say constructor. So first thing that we're gonna do is initialize the state. Game state on constructor. You can say constructor. Constructor is gonna take the props. Because this is a subclass React component, you need to pass, you need to call super. So we can say super with props, and then we initialize the state. We can say init state. So we can say this dot state is equal to. So first of all, we're gonna have a history array of arrays. So each array in history array is gonna represent a state of the game. So array. So initially we're just gonna have 9 squares, and we're just gonna fill them with null. There you go. And then we're also gonna have a step number. It's gonna be 0 initially, because initially it's gonna be at step 0. Then this is gonna be x is next. So this is just gonna be a boolean value, and we say okay, x is next. Sure. So this is our state initialized. Then we can create the method to handle the click. Method function that handles each click of the square. So we can say handle click and pass it an I. So what did we click on? First it's gonna const history. So you call this dot state dot history dot slice. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna copy over the history from the state to the step number plus 1, and then const the current is equal to history array history dot length minus 1. Now we can say squares, const squares is equal current dot squares dot slice. So what this does is it creates a copy of the squares array. So now we're gonna say if we click on a square, and we're gonna wanna calculate the winner, and if it's the end, we don't wanna the game should stop, so it should return early. And also if there is already a value there, we should also return early, because we don't wanna click, let's say, on an X and change it to a 0, or if we click on a 0 and change it to an X. So we can say if there is a winner or there is a value return early, else we keep on going. So we say squares I is this dot state dot x is next, and then we just have a ternary operator to check is x next. This dot set state, and then we set the new state, say of history dot concat. So we concatenate the squares with the squares. And then we gonna take the step number and say it's history dot length and x is next. We just set it to the opposite of itself. This dot state dot x is next. And this is our handle click method done. Once that is done, we can also create the jump to method. So our function jump allows to jump back to a particular state in the game. So we can say jump to. So we can have to pass in which step do we want to jump back to, and all we're gonna do is we're gonna set the state back to that state. That's set state. Say step number is equal to step, and then in here we're gonna decide which is next, and then we always know, because there's only 2 players, that if this is an even or an odd, so this is our jump to method, which is gonna allow us to jump back to a particular move. So at this point, all we got left to do is the render method, render function. So if I do if we implement the render function, you're gonna see the whole game. So say the render, and there you go. Say const history is equal this not state. We just get the history array. Then we say the current is const current. Say call history dot history this dot state dot step number. So all we're doing is the current is we're just selecting the current state from the history array. And then we say const winner, so this is the, we're just gonna call calculate winner function on current dot squares. So we can say check if there is a winner. Const moves history dot map. I'm just gonna map over step and move, and const DSC. So this is gonna be the description. Description is equal to move. If there is a move, go to move, and then the move number. Go to move, and then say the move number plus move. else we say it's the fast move. If there is no move, then we say go to game start. Then we're gonna return the list with all of the moves that already took place. So for each move we're gonna return the list item and give it a key of the move. And for each of the list items is gonna be a button, and on click it's gonna be an arrow function with, it's gonna be like this, dot jump to move. So for each of these we're gonna call the jump to function when it's pressed, and we're gonna display the description inside the button. Because I called it decryption, so we say description, and there you go. And so some moves. Then we can have the game status. Game status. Select status. Just init game status. If there is a winner, we can say status is equal to winner plus winner, else status is equal to next player. And then we'd say which player's move is next. So it's gonna be this dot state dot x is next, and then we say which is it? Is it at x or is it a 0? Okay, this looks right. And then we actually gonna write the method that display board render not render, we already have render, this is inside render. It's gonna be return a div. This div is gonna be class name game. This is gonna apply the CSS that we wrote at the beginning of the video. This div is gonna be given its class name of game / board, and then inside here we're gonna display the actual board and pass in the squares, current dot squares, and then on click we pass it which I, and then arrow function, this dot handle click, and pass in the I, and so this is this is the board. Now we can pass in the game info. Div class name game - info. I'll say div display the status, and div display the moves here. Okay, so that seems all good. Go back to our game. You can see that nothing's happening. Let's figure out why. And this is because I think we haven't displayed the game in the app, so this is currently all it's displaying. This is where we should display the game. So this is all there is now. If I import the game, so if I go to my here and I say import game, actually I have to export the game first. If we go back here, say export default game, and go back to my app.js and import game, and then I delete both of these, and all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just return the game. And if we go back to our game and make it full screen, there you go, you can see we have a game. Let's check if it is working. And it shows us the next game, it shows us who won. Then we can go back. So we start, next play is X, so we go. Let's try some winning combinations. And shows us the winner. We can go back in each of the moves. And that's it. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you find this video helpful, please like and subscribe.